In the dark depths of space, there were countless planets, stars, and alien races. Most of these worlds were at peace, but others were constantly fighting for survival. One such world was the planet Zora, home to a proud and fierce alien species. The Zorans had long been warriors, living by a code of strength and honor. They had conquered many challenges, but nothing could have prepared them for the enemy that now threatened their very existence. It started as a whisper. First, small skirmishes along the outer edges of their galaxy. Then the attacks grew bolder. Alien ships, unlike anything the Zorans had ever seen before, began to appear in their space, destroying entire colonies. The Zoran fleet, powerful and well-trained, was outmatched. Every battle they fought ended in defeat. The enemy was relentless, and their technology was far more advanced. Soon, Zora's cities began to fall. The once thriving planet, filled with beautiful landscapes and strong cities, now felt the weight of fear. The Zoran people, once proud and unbreakable, were beginning to see their world crumble. Their warriors fought bravely, but they were not enough. Zora's last hope rested on the shoulders of their best generals, but even they could not stop the unstoppable. Amidst the chaos, the Zoran leaders realized the truth. They could not defeat this enemy alone. For the first time in their history, they were forced to ask for help. But the Zorans had made many enemies over the years. They were proud and often too aggressive in their expansion. Who would be willing to help them now? In the final moments of desperation, the Zoran Council made a choice. They would send a message across the stars. A call for help, one last cry of desperation. The message would travel far, hoping to reach anyone who could hear it. They had no idea who might answer, but they had no choice. Their people were dying, and their planet was on the brink of total destruction. The message was simple but full of emotion. It spoke of the destruction of their cities, the fall of their people, and the helplessness they felt. It was a cry for mercy and an urgent plea for aid. The tone was raw, full of fear and pain. Whoever heard it would know that this was a race on the edge of extinction. The words were carefully chosen, knowing that their very survival depended on how it would be received. The message was sent, and in the far reaches of space, a human space station picked up the signal. At first, the humans did not know what to make of the message. They had heard cries from different species before, pleas for help, demands for attention, but nothing like this. This was different. The desperation in the voice of the Zoran leader was clear. It sent a chill down the spine of everyone who heard it. The humans had never encountered the Zorans before, but they had heard rumors about them. Fierce warriors, always aggressive, often at war with others. They were not the kind of species most people would want to get involved with. The human officers at the space station debated the message for hours. Some argued it was a trap, a trick designed to lure them into a fight. Others believed it was genuine, that the Zorans were truly in danger. The debate raged on as time passed, but one thing was clear: the humans had to decide quickly. The enemy that attacked the Zorans would not wait for them to make a decision. The clock was ticking. Among the officers, there was one who could not shake the feeling that they had to act. Captain Alex, a seasoned leader with years of experience, listened to the message again and again. He could hear the fear in the voice of the Zoran leader. He knew that if the humans did nothing, an entire species might be wiped out. But if they did help, they would risk their own safety. There was no certainty. There was only a chance to do what was right. Captain Alex stood before the council of officers, his eyes fixed on the screen that displayed the alien message. He had to make a choice. After a long silence, he made his decision. "We will answer the cry," he said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "We may not know who the Zorans are, but we cannot turn our backs on a race in need." The room was quiet for a moment, and then the decision was made. The humans would send a fleet to Zora. They would risk everything to help the species they knew little about. It wasn't just about saving the Zorans. It was about standing up for what was right, even when the odds were against them. As the orders went out to prepare the fleet, Captain Alex felt a sense of both fear and hope. He knew that this mission would be unlike any other. The humans would be entering uncharted territory, facing an unknown enemy, and working with an alien species they knew little about. But one thing was clear: their arrival would mean everything to the Zorans. Their cry for help had been heard, and humanity was ready to answer. The human fleet would travel to Zora, risking everything for a race they had never met, but one that needed their help. The next steps would be dangerous, uncertain, and filled with challenges. But Captain Alex had made his decision. They would answer the desperate cry, and they would do whatever it took to help those in need. The decision had been made. The fleet was to be sent. The humans would answer the desperate plea from the Zoran people, though they still had no idea what lay ahead. The reality of the situation set in as the fleet was prepared for the long journey. Ships were checked, supplies were gathered, and soldiers readied themselves for what might be the most important mission of their lives. Captain Alex stood on the command bridge, staring out at the stars. The space station was bustling with activity, but the captain couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. It wasn't that he doubted their ability to carry out the mission. It was the unknown that worried him. The Zorans were fierce, yes, but they were also proud, perhaps too proud to accept help from an outsider, especially one from a species they had never interacted with. And what if they were walking into a trap? What if this was just a ruse to lure the humans into a vulnerable position? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the communications officer. "Captain, the fleet is ready for departure. We're all set to leave within the hour." Captain Alex nodded, still lost in thought. He turned to face his crew, his team. They were ready. He could see it in their eyes, the determination, the understanding of what was at stake. They weren't just going to help the Zorans. They were going to do something greater. They were going to prove that humanity could make a difference, even in the face of the unknown. He addressed the room. "We're heading into uncharted space, into a war we know little about. But we're going because someone needs us. The Zorans asked for help, and we're going to give it. We don't know what kind of reception we'll get, but we'll stay true to our mission. We protect those in need. We don't back down. We move forward together." "Understood." "Yes, Captain," came the unified response. The mood on the bridge shifted from uncertainty to resolve. Everyone was ready, each person understanding the gravity of the situation. The fleet wasn't just traveling to another world. They were heading into a fight, an unknown conflict, on behalf of an alien species. They had never done this before. But that was what humanity was about, stepping up when others wouldn't. They were not a species to stand by while others suffered. As the countdown to launch began, the crew worked in perfect harmony. Every officer had their task. Every technician made sure their equipment was ready, and the soldiers prepared themselves for what they might face. There was no fear, only a shared commitment to their mission. For many of them, this wasn't just about following orders. It was about doing what was right. The first jump through hyperspace felt like a leap into the unknown. As the fleet moved further from Earth, they couldn't help but wonder what awaited them on the other side of the galaxy. Was it a trap? Would they find the Zorans in time to save them? These questions loomed in the minds of the officers, soldiers, and crew members as they stared out into the infinite dark of space. There was no turning back now. Days passed as the fleet traveled through the vast emptiness of space. The crew kept busy with training, simulations, and preparing for every possible scenario. Captain Alex often found himself reviewing the intercepted distress signal over and over again, hoping to gain more understanding. What had driven the Zorans to such desperation? What kind of enemy were they up against? And more importantly, would they be able to work with the Zorans once they arrived? Or would their pride and suspicion make cooperation impossible? One evening, as Captain Alex sat in his quarters, studying the information on the Zorans, his communications officer called him to the bridge. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Zorans. It's not like the last one. It's more urgent." Alex quickly stood and made his way to the bridge. The crew was already gathered around the communication console. The message was faint but clear. A Zoran leader's voice filled the room, desperate and shaken. "We have little time. The enemy, they are at our gates. We will not survive unless you come now. Please hurry." It was not a plea anymore. It was a warning. The enemy was closing in faster than anyone had anticipated. The message ended abruptly, and the silence that followed was thick with tension. The urgency was real. The time for hesitation was over. Alex knew they were racing against the clock. There was no more debating, no more wondering. They had to get to Zora as quickly as possible, or they would lose their chance to help. "Helm, prepare for the final jump. Get us to Zora now," Captain Alex ordered. His voice was calm, but there was a sense of urgency that matched the message they had just received. The crew sprang into action. The star maps were updated, the jump coordinates set. There was no time for mistakes. The Zoran world was on the brink of collapse, and the humans were their last hope. The fleet entered hyperspace once again, this time with even more determination. Every passing moment felt like it could be their last. The crew knew they might face an overwhelming enemy, that they might be walking into a battle they couldn't win. But that didn't matter. They were there to help. And no matter what, they would give everything to save the Zorans. As they traveled, Captain Alex couldn't help but wonder how they would be received when they arrived. Would the Zorans accept their help, or would they see it as an invasion? He had no answers, but he knew that the mission wasn't just about fighting. It was about understanding, cooperation, and proving that humanity had the strength to do what was right, no matter the cost. Time was running out, but Captain Alex and his crew were prepared to face whatever came next. They were ready to do more than just answer the call. They were ready to change the course of the Zoran people's fate. The journey through hyperspace felt like an eternity, each second stretching into what seemed like hours. Captain Alex paced quietly on the bridge, his eyes occasionally glancing at the star charts flickering on the display. The stars outside were nothing but a blur of light as the fleet moved at incredible speed toward Zora. But inside the ship, the tension was thick. They were close now, too close, yet still a vast distance away from truly understanding what awaited them. The communication officer, Lieutenant Reese, turned to Alex. "Captain, we've just received another transmission. It's from Zora. This one is different. It's a distress signal." Her voice held an edge of uncertainty. Alex felt a knot in his stomach. He had hoped that the Zorans had been able to hold on long enough for the fleet to arrive. But this new message was another sign that their situation had worsened. He stepped forward and took the seat in front of the communication console. The message flickered to life, and this time there was no voice, only the image of a Zoran leader, their eyes wide with fear. The video was distorted, the signal weak, but the meaning was clear. The Zoran leader was alone, standing in what appeared to be a ruined city. Buildings were crumbling in the background, and the sky was filled with smoke and dust. It was obvious the planet was in the midst of a battle, but it was one they were losing. The Zoran's voice came through, shaky but desperate. "Please, you must come quickly. We cannot hold much longer. The enemy, they are everywhere." The message ended abruptly, the screen flickering into static. The silence that followed on the bridge was heavy. Alex stood up, feeling a rush of urgency. He couldn't bear the thought that the Zorans might fall before the humans could reach them. He needed to act. He turned to the crew. "We need to accelerate. Every moment counts. Prepare for another jump. Get us to Zora as fast as we can. Helm, set a direct course." The crew was already in motion. There was no hesitation now. Lieutenant Reese began typing commands into the communications console, sending out the order to the fleet. Within minutes, the ships adjusted their course, and the stars outside stretched into the familiar streaks of hyperspace once again. As the fleet continued its journey, Captain Alex sat quietly in his chair, the weight of the mission pressing on him. His mind kept returning to the image of the Zoran leader, alone, fighting for survival in a crumbling city. The Zorans were a proud race, but pride couldn't stop the destruction of their world. They needed help, but how could the humans offer that help? Would they even be accepted? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Lieutenant Reese, standing near the communication console, spoke again. "Captain, I've been reviewing the distress signal. We've been receiving it at irregular intervals, but it's clear that the enemy has a strategy. They're not just attacking. They're isolating the Zorans, cutting them off from any means of defense. It's as if they've anticipated every move." Alex ran a hand through his hair. What kind of enemy could plan like that? Reese hesitated. "I don't know, Captain. But it's clear they're not just interested in taking the planet. They want to wipe out every trace of the Zoran people." The captain stood, frustration building. The Zorans had asked for help, but what if the humans couldn't provide it in time? What if they were already too late? The door to the bridge opened, and one of the soldiers, Sergeant Daniels, entered with a report. "Captain, we've been monitoring the enemy fleet. It's much larger than we initially thought. They've got thousands of ships on the move. We're outnumbered." Alex's gaze tightened. "Are we still on course?" "Yes, Captain. We'll be there in less than 3 hours. We'll make it, but we'll be in their sights long before we arrive." The weight of the situation was overwhelming. The Zorans were already fighting for their survival, and now the humans were about to walk into the heart of that battle. It wasn't just about saving the planet. It was about saving a species that had never known humanity, a species that might not accept help from strangers. Yet humanity had made a promise. They would help, no matter the cost. Alex paced the bridge, formulating a plan. They needed to be strategic. The fleet wasn't large enough to take on the enemy head-to-head, especially not with the overwhelming numbers the Zorans had reported. They had to outsmart them. But time was running out. "Lieutenant, send a message to the fleet commanders. I want them ready for a tactical drop. We'll land our forces in Zora's capital city, and we'll establish a safe zone to begin assisting with evacuations. We'll have to fight our way in. I don't want to take unnecessary risks, but the Zorans need us, and we're not leaving until we've done everything we can to save them." "Yes, Captain," Reese responded, already typing out the orders. Alex took a deep breath. "This is it. We make it or break it here. We can't turn back." As the fleet prepared to approach Zora, the mood shifted from tense determination to quiet resolve. They knew the risks. They knew they might not be able to defeat the enemy, but they were going to try. For the Zorans, for humanity's honor, and for the survival of an entire species, they were going to fight. Minutes passed. The countdown to Zora continued. As they neared the planet's atmosphere, Alex felt the weight of responsibility settle over him once again. He had led his crew into danger before, but this felt different. This wasn't just about protecting the people of Earth. It was about doing what was right, even when the odds were against them. The planet below was a battleground. Cities burned. Smoke rose from the surface like an endless storm. The Zoran people were fighting, but they were outnumbered, and time was slipping away. The fleet descended through the atmosphere, their destination now clear. Zora's capital city, the last stronghold. As the ships began to break through the clouds, the sight of destruction below them was impossible to ignore. It was worse than any of them had imagined. But there was no turning back now. The humans had answered the call. They had come to Zora's defense, and they would do everything they could to help those in need. The future of the Zoran people depended on the actions of these brave humans, and Captain Alex was determined not to let them down. The fleet descended into the planet's atmosphere, the once clear skies now cloaked with swirling clouds of smoke and dust. Below, the cities of Zora were mere silhouettes against the backdrop of destruction, the evidence of years of struggle with their unseen enemies. As the ships approached the planet's surface, the true scale of the devastation became even more apparent. The world was not only on the brink of collapse, it was actively unraveling. Captain Alex stood on the command bridge, staring intently at the viewport. The desolate landscape below was like a wound that refused to heal. His mind raced as he considered their options. The fleet had been designed for combat, but the situation on Zora was unlike anything they had trained for. There would be no grand battles here, no shining moments of victory. This was a race against time, a mission to assist a people on the verge of extinction. "Helm, bring us into low orbit," Alex commanded, his voice steady despite the storm of uncertainty within him. The crew scrambled to follow orders, adjusting their course with precision. Soon, the fleet was positioned above the capital city, ready for deployment. From this vantage point, the damage to the city was horrifying. What had once been a hub of Zoran civilization now resembled a battlefield, with crumbling buildings, fires burning out of control, and the distant sound of explosions and chaos reaching their ears even through the thick atmosphere. "All hands, prepare for ground deployment. The Zorans need us now more than ever," Alex continued, his voice filled with conviction. He turned to the team around him, each person bracing themselves for the uncertainty that lay ahead. "We're landing in the capital. We're going to help them secure a foothold, and from there, we'll evacuate as many people as we can." The order was met with a chorus of affirmations. Soldiers readied themselves, checking their equipment and ensuring everything was in place. Technicians and medics gathered their supplies, preparing for the worst. Everyone knew that when the time came to step off the ships, they might be entering into a world where nothing was guaranteed, where every step could lead to unforeseen danger. But there was no turning back now. Alex's eyes scanned the view screen once more. The Zoran capital was at the center of it all. If they could establish a secure location there, it would be the best chance they had to help the most people. But they had to act fast. Every second that passed was a second closer to the end for the Zorans. It wasn't just about saving the city. It was about saving the hope of an entire species. The landing ships detached from the main fleet, cutting through the atmosphere at breakneck speed. As they neared the surface, the violence of the planet's chaos became even more real. Sirens blared from the ship's hulls as they neared their designated landing zones. Alex's thoughts raced as the ship shook with turbulence, the sounds of distant explosions rattling the communication channels. He looked over at Lieutenant Reese, who had remained quiet but focused. "What's the status of the Zoran forces?" he asked, hoping to gain any insight into their situation. "We've been able to get some information," Reese replied, her eyes fixed on the data streams. "The Zoran military is fragmented. They're scattered across the city, trying to hold off the enemy forces. But it's clear they're outnumbered, and their command structure has collapsed. They're fighting to survive, not to win." A heavy silence settled over the bridge. Everyone knew that even with their superior technology and training, the humans could not simply take on an enemy force that was already so well entrenched. Their mission had changed, from not only assisting the Zorans, but also offering them the support they needed to stand a chance at survival. "We'll do everything we can," Captain Alex said quietly, as much to himself as to the crew. "We may not be able to defeat the enemy, but we can give them the tools they need to survive. We can help them rebuild what's left." The landing ships touched down on the outskirts of the capital city with a heavy thud, the sound of their landing echoing in the quiet chaos. The doors of the ships opened, and the crew poured out, prepared for anything. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of burning debris filled their nostrils. A faint light from the distant fires cast eerie shadows on the cracked streets. As Captain Alex stepped out of the ship, his boots hitting the cracked earth, he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of awe and sorrow. He had seen destruction before. He had been in combat zones and war-torn planets. But this was different. The Zorans were not just fighting for their survival. They were fighting against extinction itself. "We've got to move fast," Alex said, his voice grim. He turned to the soldiers beside him. "Find survivors. Set up a perimeter. Get people to the evacuation points as quickly as possible. We're not here to fight. We're here to help." The soldiers nodded, scattering into the streets as Alex and his team moved forward. The city was eerily quiet for a place that was supposedly in the middle of a war. Here, there was no enemy army to face, at least not one visible in this moment. There were only the remnants of a civilization on the brink of collapse. As they moved deeper into the city, they encountered the first group of Zoran survivors. They were huddled in the ruins of a building, their faces dirty and tired, their eyes filled with fear. The sight struck Alex to his core. These were the people who had called for help, who had placed their faith in humanity. And now, all he could do was give them a chance. "Stay close," Alex told them as he moved past, ensuring the area was secure. "We'll get you to safety." But even as he spoke those words, he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. The enemy had been silent for too long. What were they waiting for? Why hadn't they made a move yet? Suddenly, the air seemed to grow heavier. The silence that had hung in the air was broken by a distant rumble, a low, terrifying sound. It was like the ground itself was groaning under the weight of something immense. "Captain," Reese said from behind him, her voice filled with urgency. "We've got movement. Something's approaching. It's not just a few people. It's—" Before she could finish her sentence, the ground trembled beneath them again. The distant rumble grew louder, echoing through the city. This wasn't just the enemy making a move. It was something bigger, something far more dangerous. Whatever was coming, it wasn't a mere skirmish. It was the beginning of something that could change everything. Alex turned to his team, a grim realization settling in. "Prepare for the worst," he said, as the first hints of an answer began to approach, silent but deadly. The storm was coming, and they had no idea how to stop it. The situation on the ground was growing more dire by the minute. The city of Zora, once a vibrant hub of culture and innovation, now lay in ruins. What had once been a thriving center of life had become a ghost town, haunted by the echo of distant destruction. The humans had landed in the outskirts of the capital. And now, with every step they took, they could feel the weight of the Zoran people's suffering pressing down on them. But it wasn't just the physical devastation that affected Captain Alex and his team. It was the deep sense of helplessness that threatened to overwhelm them. The Zorans had trusted them to help, to give them a fighting chance, but the road ahead was anything but certain. As Alex and his team navigated through the shattered streets, they came across more and more Zoran survivors. Some were huddled in shelters, others were making their way through the wreckage in search of food and water. They all had one thing in common: a deep, silent fear of what would come next. The Zorans had been fighting for so long, and now they were not just fighting an enemy, they were fighting to hold on to their very existence. Alex's heart went out to them. He could see it in their eyes. The weariness, the hopelessness. The weight of survival had taken its toll, and he knew they had very little left. Still, they kept fighting, and that was something Alex and his team could use. He had seen many species across the galaxy in his time, but there was something about the Zoran spirit that stirred something deep within him. They were resilient, unwilling to give up even in the face of overwhelming odds. Humanity could learn a lot from them. He gathered the survivors together and began making plans. "We need to organize," he said, his voice firm. "We can't just keep moving aimlessly. We'll secure a safe zone here, then begin evacuating as many people as possible. We'll have to work together, humanity and the Zorans. If we do this right, we can save a lot of lives." The Zorans, while still wary of their new human allies, seemed to sense the sincerity in Alex's words. Slowly, one by one, they nodded in agreement, stepping forward to help. They were tired, hungry, and traumatized, but they still had a spark of determination. Together, they began to work, reinforcing barricades, gathering what little resources they had left, and preparing for the next phase of their struggle. In the meantime, the human soldiers began scouting the area, carefully surveying their surroundings for any signs of enemy movement. The streets were eerily quiet, the only sounds the distant crackling of fires and the occasional rumble of collapsing buildings. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Something was coming. But he didn't have the luxury of time to investigate. The survivors needed him now. As the team worked to set up a temporary safe zone, Alex couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led to this moment. A few days ago, the Zorans had sent out a desperate cry for help, and humanity had answered. But now that they were here, he realized how much they had underestimated the scale of the disaster. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the soul of an entire species. The Zorans weren't just losing their homes, they were losing their identity, their history, their culture. The thought of that loss gnawed at him. We can't let them lose everything. Alex murmured to himself, his mind racing with ideas of how to help. But even as he tried to formulate a plan, his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, unmistakable noise, a low hum, vibrating through the ground. Lieutenant Reese, standing next to him, looked up, her expression grave. "Captain," she said softly, "we've got a problem." Alex's heart skipped a beat. He turned to see her monitoring the communication system. "What is it?" "It's a signal," she replied. "It's coming from deep within the city. And it's not from the enemy. It's different. Something is activating down there." Alex's mind raced. He had assumed the enemy was the only threat to the Zorans. But now, with this new information, it seemed like there was something else lurking in the shadows, something they hadn't anticipated. "What kind of signal?" Alex asked, his voice low. Reese looked up, her face pale. "I don't know, Captain. It's not like anything we've encountered before. It's not military. It's more advanced. Like a warning signal." A warning signal from who? Alex wondered aloud, but he had no answers. Reese continued scanning the transmission. "It's coming from the heart of the city. The signal, it's building. It's getting stronger." Alex's mind began to work quickly, piecing together the fragments of information he had. A warning signal in the heart of the city. What could it be? A hidden weapon? A last-ditch defense system? Or was it something else entirely? Something more dangerous? "We need to investigate," Alex said, his decision final. "Reese, get the team ready. We're going in." With the Zoran survivors safely tucked into their makeshift safe zone, Alex and his team moved out again. The air was thick with tension as they made their way toward the center of the city. The streets were even quieter now, the usual hum of activity replaced with an eerie stillness. Alex could feel his pulse quicken. Whatever was sending the warning signal was close, too close for comfort. The closer they got to the source of the signal, the more Alex's instincts screamed at him. Something wasn't right. He could feel it in his bones. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end as they approached what appeared to be a vast, underground structure hidden beneath the ruins. It wasn't just a building. It was a complex, something far beyond the technology they had seen on the surface. As they descended into the depths of the city, the hum of the signal grew louder, reverberating through the walls of the underground structure. The walls were made of smooth, metallic material that seemed almost alien in nature. It felt like they had crossed into a different world entirely. "Stay alert," Alex warned the team. "We don't know what we're walking into." They moved cautiously through the tunnels, the eerie hum guiding their way. The deeper they went, the more the structure seemed to pulse with energy. It was as if the very air was charged with anticipation, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Then, without warning, the hum stopped. The silence was deafening. "Captain, look at this," Lieutenant Reese called out. She had found something, an ancient console, unlike anything they had ever seen. The screen flickered to life as she pressed a button, revealing a series of symbols and glyphs that Alex couldn't understand. But he didn't need to. He knew the moment he saw the symbols that they had found something important. Something that could change everything. "This is it," Alex murmured under his breath. Whatever this was, it was the key. The answer to the Zorans' survival, and possibly their future. The question was, what was it, and who had left it behind? As the team gathered around the console, the walls around them began to tremble, and a new sound, far louder and more ominous, echoed through the structure. Something else was awakening. Alex's heart pounded. This wasn't just a place of refuge. It was a place of power, and it was ready to reveal its secrets. The discovery deep within the underground structure left Alex with more questions than answers. The console they had activated was unlike anything the human team had ever encountered. Its design was alien. Its technology advanced to a level far beyond anything they had seen in their own civilization. The strange symbols and glyphs flickered on the screen, seemingly alive, reacting to the team's presence as if it were aware of their arrival. But there was no time to waste analyzing every detail. The pulse of the energy around them grew stronger with every passing second, a constant reminder that something ancient and powerful was awakening. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. What had they stumbled upon? And why had it been hidden for so long beneath the surface of the city? "Captain," Lieutenant Reese said, her voice tense as she continued to study the console, "I'm not sure how to interpret all of this, but there's definitely a connection to the Zoran civilization here. This technology, it seems to be linked to their past, something from long before the current war." Reese's words hung in the air, and for a moment, Alex allowed himself to think about the possibilities. If this technology had been buried here for so long, could it be the key to reversing the tide of the conflict? Could it offer the Zorans a way to reclaim their world? But then the silence was broken by a faint sound, a low, almost inaudible hum that seemed to come from deep within the earth itself. The air around them grew colder, and a wave of energy washed over the team, sending a chill down their spines. It was as if the structure was alive, reacting to their presence. Alex felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as the walls began to vibrate. "Something is coming," Alex muttered to himself. He could feel it, like the calm before a storm. Without warning, a massive door, hidden within the walls of the structure, slowly creaked open. A deep, resonating sound filled the air, and Alex instinctively reached for his communicator. He wasn't sure what was happening, but it was clear they had triggered something that was far beyond their control. The team had to stay sharp. "Get ready," Alex commanded, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "We need to move fast." The team readied their weapons, knowing that whatever lay beyond the door, it wasn't going to be a simple answer to the Zorans' troubles. But as the door slowly opened, what greeted them wasn't an army or an enemy. It was something far more complex. Inside, the room stretched far deeper than the eye could see. At the center of the room stood a large pedestal, and atop it rested a glowing sphere, radiating an otherworldly light. It seemed to pulse with energy, its surface rippling like liquid light, as if it were alive. Alex took a cautious step forward, feeling an almost magnetic pull toward it. The room itself was alive with an ancient power, the very air thick with the weight of history. Lieutenant Reese stepped beside him, her eyes wide with awe. Is that the source of the signal?" Alex nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving the glowing sphere. "It has to be. But what is it? And what is it doing here?" As he moved closer, the sphere began to react, its surface shifting as if it recognized their presence. A faint, harmonic tone resonated from it, a sound that was almost soothing, yet unsettling at the same time. It was as if the sphere was speaking, sending out a message, a signal meant for someone, or something. But the message was still unclear. "Captain, I'm picking up something," Reese said, her voice urgent. "There's a sequence of symbols coming from the sphere, almost like a translation is happening. It's trying to communicate." Alex's heart raced as he stepped closer. He had no idea what the sphere could be, but the fact that it was trying to communicate with them meant one thing: it was important. And whatever it was the Zoran's last hope. "Can you decipher it?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. Reese's fingers danced across the console, her brow furrowing as she analyzed the symbols. It was slow, painstaking work, but gradually the message began to take shape. "It's a message of sorts," Reese said, her voice now a mixture of awe and concern. "It's not just words. It's more like a warning about something that could destroy everything. But it's not clear what exactly it's referring to." Alex's mind raced. A warning? A warning about what? He stepped closer to the pedestal, his eyes fixed on the glowing sphere. It seemed to respond to his movements, its light intensifying as he approached. The tone it emitted grew louder, its pitch rising in a haunting melody. He could feel the power within the room building, swirling around him like an invisible force. It was as though the sphere was awakening from a long slumber, and now it was calling out to them. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled again, this time stronger, more forceful. It wasn't just the vibrations from the structure. The very foundation of the city seemed to be shaking. "Captain, something's happening," Reese said urgently, her voice trembling with a mixture of excitement and fear. "I think the sphere is activating something. Whatever it is, it's—" Before she could finish, the entire room was flooded with light. A beam of energy shot up from the sphere, reaching high into the sky, piercing through the ground above them. The walls of the underground structure groaned and shook as the energy intensified. The beam lit up the night sky, visible even from the surface above. It was like a signal, a beacon reaching out across the stars. "What is that?" Alex whispered in disbelief. The beam's intensity increased, and a deep rumbling sound filled the air. The city of Zora seemed to react, its very heartbeat resonating with the pulse of energy. Alex's eyes widened as he realized that the Zorans weren't just trying to survive. They were trying to summon something. Something powerful. Something that had been hidden away for centuries. But what had they awakened? As the beam continued to pulse, a new sound echoed through the structure. A low, resonating hum, like a distant voice calling out across the void. It was as if the sphere was trying to communicate with something far beyond Zora, something ancient, something powerful. Alex's heart raced as the realization hit him. Whatever they had triggered in this underground chamber wasn't just a message. It was a summoning. The question now was, what was coming in response? The beam of light continued to surge upward from the glowing sphere, cutting through the darkness of the night, like a beacon that called out to the stars. Its energy was almost palpable, rippling through the air, and Alex could feel the pressure of it bearing down on him. The very ground seemed to pulse with the intensity of the light, the walls of the underground chamber vibrating with an unseen force. Whatever they had awakened was vast, ancient, and far more powerful than anything they could have imagined. "Captain, the energy readings are off the charts," Lieutenant Reese said, her voice trembling slightly as she analyzed the data on her console. "I don't know what's causing this, but we need to get out of here. The structure's integrity is failing." Alex could feel the unease in her voice, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from the beam of light. There was something mesmerizing about it, a pull that drew him deeper into its mystery. This wasn't just a weapon or a trap. It was something far beyond that. But what was it? What had they disturbed beneath the city of Zora? He turned to Reese, his mind racing. "We can't leave yet. Not until we understand what this is. If this is the key to saving the Zorans, we need to know how to use it." The team moved closer to the pedestal, despite the increasing tremors. The energy was so intense now that it was hard to think straight. The very air around them felt heavy, like it was charged with something ancient and forgotten. Alex couldn't help but wonder if the Zorans had known about this power all along, hiding it away for fear of what might happen if it was ever awakened. Reese's hands flew across the console as she tried to make sense of the symbols that continued to flash across the screen. But the translation was slow and incomplete. It was like trying to piece together a puzzle with too many missing pieces. "I'm not getting a clear translation," "Captain," she said, frustration creeping into her voice. "The symbols they're not just a message. They're instructions, but they're incomplete. This technology, it's far more advanced than anything we've ever seen." Alex took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. "We need to keep trying. We can't leave this unfinished." Suddenly, the ground shook again, more violently this time. The entire structure seemed to groan, as if it were on the verge of collapse. The beam of light flickered for a moment, then intensified again, brighter than ever. The team instinctively braced themselves against the walls, their hands gripping anything they could find for support. "I don't know how much longer we can stay down here," Lieutenant Reese shouted over the growing rumble. "This place is falling apart." But Alex wasn't ready to give up. Not when they were so close. He looked at the glowing sphere once more, trying to understand its purpose, its meaning. The answer was just beyond his reach, like a fleeting dream slipping away the moment he tried to grasp it. Then, as if in response to his thoughts, the sphere's light began to shift. The energy fluctuated, moving in waves like an ocean tide. The symbols on the console started to change, morphing into new patterns, faster now, as if the sphere itself was actively trying to communicate with them. Alex stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest as the symbols began to form words. "They're not just warnings," Reese whispered, her voice filled with awe. "They're instructions, but there's more. It's telling us about a defense system, a way to protect the Zorans." Alex's breath caught in his throat. A defense system, a way to protect the Zorans from the enemy forces that had ravaged their world. Could this ancient technology be the key to turning the tide of the war? He stepped closer to the pedestal, the words on the screen finally coming into focus. "Activate the final protocol," he read aloud. "The protocol to ensure the survival of the Zoran people." Reese looked up at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Final protocol? What does that mean?" Before Alex could answer, the beam of light from the sphere shifted again, this time focusing on a specific point in the underground chamber. The walls parted, revealing a hidden passageway. The air inside the passageway was cool, a sharp contrast to the heat emanating from the pedestal. But even as the path revealed itself, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay ahead, it wouldn't be an easy solution. It would be their last chance, their final attempt to secure the Zoran's future. "Captain," Lieutenant Reese said, her voice steady, "this is it. We have to go. If the sphere is right, if the final protocol is activated, it could turn the tide. But we need to move quickly." Alex nodded, a sense of determination settling over him. This was their chance, but it wouldn't be easy. It never was. Still, they had no choice but to press forward. They had to believe that this ancient technology, this powerful force, could give the Zorans the fighting chance they deserved. The team moved quickly through the newly revealed passageway, their footsteps echoing through the narrow tunnels. The walls seemed to close in around them, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. The farther they went, the more Alex could feel the intensity of the sphere's energy pressing down on him. It was as though the very structure of the city was reacting to their movements, guiding them towards something important. Finally, at the end of the passageway, they'd reached a large chamber. At its center stood an immense, circular platform, surrounded by strange alien symbols. The platform itself hummed with energy, much like the sphere, but this time, the energy was focused, almost as if it were waiting for them to activate it. "This is it," Alex said, his voice low but filled with certainty. "The final protocol. Whatever it is, it's here." Reese stepped forward, scanning the symbols on the platform. "It's all connected," she murmured. "The sphere, the symbols, the technology. It's all part of the same system. It's a defense mechanism, a way to protect the Zorans from the invaders. But we need to trigger it." With a deep breath, Alex moved toward the center of the platform. As he placed his hand on the surface, the symbols began to glow, the energy rising in intensity. The ground beneath them trembled once more, and for a moment, Alex felt as though time had frozen. The moment they had been waiting for had arrived. The platform pulsed with light, and in an instant, the entire underground chamber was bathed in a blinding flash. A low, rumbling sound filled the air, and the team instinctively shielded their eyes. And then, silence. The light faded, and the rumbling stopped. Alex opened his eyes slowly, unsure of what to expect. What had they activated? What did it mean for the future of the Zoran people? He turned to look at his team. Their faces were filled with uncertainty, but there was something else in their eyes. Hope. The hope that this final act, this last-ditch effort, might be the salvation the Zorans so desperately needed. The mission was far from over, but at least for now, they had given the Zorans something to hold on to. A future, a chance at survival. As Alex stood in the heart of the underground chamber, he couldn't help but feel the weight of what they had just done. They had unlocked something powerful, something ancient. The Zorans had sent out a desperate cry for help, and humanity had answered. Now, it was time to see what the future held.